Manager changed my schedule as a power move, so I stuck to it.
A few years ago I worked at a physical media chain in New England. My location was new, so when I was hired I was interviewed by the district manager and a higher-up. Because the manager hasn't been hired yet, when I applied I made a very small window for availability. But I was also willing to close or work later shifts and work all weekends. So they agreed. And even though it was a set schedule, one did come in multiple times to cover someone else. The manager they hired was an absolute control freak. It didn't start bad, but it got ridiculous. She hated the fact that I had a set schedule. Not because I was needed at other times. I was working the least desirable shifts. It was because she didn't control it. She even said that, about a year and a half of working there, and her dropping hints that we might need to renegotiate my schedule again. For no actual reason. She scheduled me to come in 4 hours earlier on the day before my weekend, just to shake things up. I brought it up and she told me to make plans. Essentially just get over it. I was mad, but I did just that. My wife and I planned a date night when I would have normally been working. On the day in question I get a call saying that the person who was closing that night instead of me, she swapped me with a less reliable employee, had called in sick and I needed to come in my normally scheduled time. I was so happy to tell them that I was sorry but couldn't change in such short notice because I made plans. The assistant manager, who was just as giddy as the manager was to tell me about the shake-up, had to do a split shift and cancel a Tinder date because I did as I was told and made plans instead of being upset. I can relate. Lol. I was a full-time employee at a job and the manager would cut my hours in. Very immaturely. Would put all the employees' names on the schedule in order of who he liked best to worst. One of the last times he fucked with the schedule was when he dropped me from a 5-day week down to 2. When I complained to him I got a "sucks to be you" answer back. He scheduled very unreliable people to work 5 days a week for the next 3 weeks. All the people he scheduled flaked on him. One quit. One was not even available to work the hours he scheduled. But he did not check. I guess he was just too excited to take my hours and demote me to the bottom of the schedule. He then texts me that I am now on the schedule at 5 days. I shot back a text telling him I was not available, as I took hours at my point job when he cut my hours. He was pissed. Lol. Felt great. My go-to on days off has always been, I'm at a bar, home drinking, you really want me to come in? Ha. I love this. Something about management in retail seems to attract control freaks. I have a similar story. For the longest time, my schedule was fairly normal and I had nothing to complain about. I'd often work morning or mid-day shifts. Sometimes I'd need to close, then open, but it wasn't really a problem since it didn't happen very often. Then 2 things happened. First, the person in charge of scheduling moved to another store. And second, I started having to travel by bus.
Neither of these things was a problem at first, but it quickly became apparent that the new person
in charge of scheduling really wanted me to constantly close and open 2 or 3 times a week. Since traveling by bus meant that I spent an average of an hour or longer traveling between home and work, I actually could not get an 8 hours sleep between shifts. I spent a good month trying to explain the problem to her in a way she'd understand. And she kept telling me it was just a temporary thing from 1 week to the next. Finally she got tired of my complaints and told me that this was my problem and she just didn't care. She would not budge or do anything to help me, period. She made it my problem. So I solved it. I changed my availability so I couldn't close on any day. Angrily she told me I couldn't do that. That I had to be able to close or she'd cut my hours. I called her bluff. And, yep, she did. For 1 week. Turned out, She couldn't afford to not have me do earlier shifts after reassigning people to close. Having a stable schedule where I can sleep regularly is a lot easier on me, I gotta say. I remember working for a company that insisted everyone sending in an availability sheet before being hired. Well, I gave them one that said I was available 24 hours a day 6 days a week except for one day, where I was busy for a 12-hour period, in the evenings of a day in the middle of the week. One day when I allow myself to be free from anyone's commitment. Thing is, they never gave these availability sheets to the schedulers. First 2 weeks, they'd ask if I could work that day and I would say no. Why can't they see my available hours? Turns out that management never hands those sheets in to those that need the information. Needless to say, I never really lasted long there. I had a similar experience with my second ever job, working at a movie theater. I specifically took a night off of work to go watch an opening night movie with my dad. The thing about my dad is that we don't really have a whole lot in common, but we both love superhero movies. It's basically the only thing we bond over, and it means a great deal to me. So we were going to watch one of the earlier MCU movies, and I booked the night off about a month in advance. I okayed it with my direct reporting manager and the location manager. I told them that it was going to be an opening night for a widely anticipated movie and I wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be an issue. I got the green light. About 3 hours before the movie started, my direct manager calls me and asks if I can come in as the 2 other people working my shift came. Were both sent home due to being ill. Nasty flu that was going around the theater at the time. I told him that I had the time booked off a month in advance and that both him and his boss signed off on it, in no uncertain terms. I was told that if I didn't come in that it may be seen as you not needing the hours and therefore they could be given to someone who was more in need. At the time I didn't really realize that I was being blackmailed into coming into work or getting fired. I ended up going in and covering the absolute hellish nightmare of a shift that was left for me, and my dad went on to see the movie without me, which really pissed me off because, and this rings true to this day, I have seen every MCU movie on release night with my dad, with the exception of this one. Much to my manager, his boss and corporate's chagrin, I had already covered someone else's shift that week and was already over 40 hours. Now, considering I was part-time, in this case, it means keeping me at a solid 39 weekly hours is to avoid giving me benefits. This meant that I was entitled to overtime. It seems like nobody bothered to double-check this schedule because I had a total of 60 hours that week due to shift coverage and the impromptu last-minute call-in. My manager was fired after corporate called and gave his boss hell for scheduling me well over my hours for that week. Due to the aforementioned bug that went around the theater, it meant that I also couldn't reduce any upcoming shifts I had as I was one of the only ones cross-trained across all of the different areas. At 16 years old, seeing that next paycheck be nearly double what I was used to seeing was a bittersweet moment. Although I still would have much rather had spent that time with my dad. As someone who had to do scheduling, I appreciated those that had a set and reliable schedule as that provides fewer shifts to worry about. It actually makes the job easier and more predictable for everyone. I worked for a copy center and the owner of most of the Arizona locations decided that from now on, everyone needed to punch in within the 60 seconds of their assigned time. If they didn't, they were considered late. 8 o'clock on schedule. At 8:01 you were late and docked 15 minutes pay. 2 late arrivals would result in a write-up. Here is some background. Prior to this policy, most employees stayed later than scheduled to take care of customers or orders they were working on. It was commonplace and employees did it without any concern or question, and customers loved it. After about a month and a half, every employee at every location was written up except my store and one in Ahwatukee. Ahwatukee was the store closest to the owner. My store was visited by the owner, who was proud to say her idea was proving to be working at my location. I then informed her I had altered the time clock, so it was 7 minutes slow. I explained that I only docked pay if they were 8 minutes late. She wasn't happy and I was expecting a potential termination with my disclosure. She asked why would I do that against her wishes. And I replied that her policy was anti-productive and destroying store morale. I also added it created a danger that was going to likely get someone hurt or worse rushing to work. No termination. But she had a habit of delayed retaliation. A week goes by and Ahwatukee has just one female employee who is the last employee left without a write-up. Also the owner's favorite employee. She was running late and called into the store to have someone unlock the back door so she could slip in as quick as possible. The girl at the store was confirming that she would unlock the door when she overheard the car the girl was driving being hit by an 18-wheeler after the car ran a red light. She continued to listen as the girl in the vehicle drew her last breaths and died. The time clock policy the next morning was rescinded. All write-ups wiped away. The owner paid for the store workers' mental health counseling and covered all the funeral costs. I know when the owner heard what had happened, with all the details, she could remember our conversation, hear my words of warning and feel their sting. Even with rescinding the policy and erasing any effects, she had changed the employee mindset forever across all her stores. No one, and I mean no one, would stay past their scheduled shift. The productivity fell 10% to 15% or more because employees passed work on rather than finished it. The norm became that the last 15 minutes of an employee's shift was used to shuffle 30 to 40 minutes of work to the next shift. When I left retail hell for a better job, I told the boss, who basically pushed me to quit with his micromanaging bullshit, I would be willing to work part-time from 4:30 p.m. to closing time, Wednesday through Sunday. I explicitly told him I would not come in on Monday or Tuesday, those were my days off at my new job. And I was going to have 2 days to myself no matter what. Yeah, sure. Okay. Quote. The very next Tuesday, the phone rings. Me. Hello? Coworker. Well read. Where are you? Me. At home. In my living room. Coworker. Are you coming in tonight? Me. No. Why would I? Coworker. You're on the schedule. Me. Nope. I told manager I wouldn't work Monday or Tuesday. I made myself pretty clear. Coworker. Well, he put you on the schedule. Me. Well, then he's on crack. Because I'm not coming in. Coworker. Well, what am I gonna do? I have a doctor's appointment at 6 o'clock. Me. What time is it now? Coworker. It's 5:50. Me. Well, you'd better get going if you're gonna make that appointment. Coworker. What about the store? Me. I really don't care. It's not my problem. Coworker. Me. Coworker. Me. Click. It felt great being in a position where I could finally basically tell those jerks I was working to live, not living to work. Holy fucking shit. How do people look at something that is working fine and decide they need to take a big shit on it? Because they don't feel they've asserted dominance? This is literally work they don't have to do. Them doing work is contributing to employee churn and losing money for the business. The only person that wins is the tied-up person in their basement that takes less of a beating. Because they've managed to hurt people outside their torture dungeon. Tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy. Oh, I really wish I could have seen her face. What happened the following week? My first ever job was as a cashier at Walmart. Started end of June. Was starting college in August. The first handed them my class schedule. Said I needed at least half an hour on each end in order to get from the college there. All my classes were between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. I worked 10 to 7 all summer. Then suddenly, the first week of college, I am scheduled 8 to 4. MF. Went to management and said they had my class schedule. Why did they schedule me only during class? They said I wasn't allowed to change availability within 90 days of starting, despite that being my availability listed at my hiring. Then said the only one who could change was store manager, who conveniently went on vacation first week of college. Yay. I never went back. Worked 2 jobs in college and was looking for a third. New restaurant opened and I'm like, heck yeah, let's do this. They held a mass hiring, and with my resume I also submitted an availability schedule just to be sure they understood and were willing to work with me on that. After I got hired, submitted it again to the manager. First week after training I am scheduled for a shift in the middle of my class. No biggie. I call and get it sorted with the assistant manager. Next few weeks go the same way. Scheduled on a day and time I clearly outlined is not available. Assistant manager that kept fixing my schedule quits. New manager takes over. I show up for a shift and leadership is having a meeting in the main room. I am stocking condiments on all the tables. I hear new manager say, "This one here." My name never shows up. I don't even think she's real. I look up, raise my hand and say, "Hi, I am." My name. Remember when I called you about my schedule the other day? I brought another copy of my availability. They quit, and not long after I did too, because kitchen staff were useless and caused me to lose so much in tips because they were not able to keep a manager either. I love it when an assistant manager manages to cock block themselves. I never understood why it is so hard to plan out schedules in advance. My friend works at a grocery and gets his weekly schedule a day before that week starts. And most people that work there would be willing to work a set schedule. So why wouldn't they do at least a month-to-month schedule? I never understood why scheduling was so hard. When I finally got to a position where I was doing the scheduling, it was incredibly easy as long as there weren't too many PTO requests. I think in the 2 years I did scheduling there I only denied one person a day off they requested. Because so many people put in a request for that same day way ahead of time or had school, so they were normally off, and her request was submitted like a week before that day off. I explained the situation and she was perfectly fine with it. Glorious. I wonder when employers, managers will recognize that their most important asset is their employees? I was working at a franchised McDonald's location and, to be fair, when I hired on it was being managed very well by the franchise owner's son. Very 90s style management, encouraging enthusiasm, but mostly treating employees fairly. Cost of living was cheap in the area, and the 50 cents over minimum wage they offered was sadly competitive for the area. I'd been working there about 8 months when I decided to go back to college. I was too old to qualify for most of the McDonald's scholarships, but I was still highly encouraged to do this by the store manager, and I was promised, in writing, that I would always have the ability to restrict my schedule as needed to accommodate my classes. I thought it was excessive considering this was a stupid part-time, minimum wage job. I only held on to the paperwork because I thought it was silly. Anyway, a year rolls by and franchise owner's son gets promoted and a true witch takes his place. The worst kind of middle management control freak that you've ever seen. She treated the store as if it were her own little kingdom. At the time, I don't know if it's still done this way, The store manager in a given location within a franchise got a big end-of-year bonus that was related to both the total profits earned by the store and by how many milestone-type goals the store hit for both store improvement and community betterment. It's a tiny store in a dinky town, so it's never going to show much profit in dollar amounts. But if she can show on paper that the store is going above and beyond in self-improvement and community improvement, her bonus gets bigger. So while she really pushed us to take advantage of getting a small bonus for filling out a form, saying we took so many credit hours, but at the same time, she wanted to promote all of us as much as possible to crew trainers and such. You get like an extra nickel an hour but have a lot more responsibilities, including requiring an open schedule. I'd already been there almost 2 years by that point. On top of that, I was 25 years old. I wasn't one of the ignorant high school kids that she was used to dealing with. I just wanted to do my job and earn enough money to pay for my books. I didn't give a crap about her games. I had a perfect record and the store had a policy of never firing anyone. Anyway, they would just stop putting them on the schedule until they eventually found another job. She tried that with me. But since she hired people for reasons other than their reliability, they always ended up short-handed, and several of the other managers liked me. So I'd get my R's and then some by being called in, more often than not. I had classes from 4 p.m. to 11 Monday through Thursday. So she deliberately scheduled me to close Sunday night and open Monday morning through Thursday morning. Ironically, this pissed a lot of other employees off because it gave me every Friday and Saturday off. Had to, or else I'd go into overtime. We eventually reached a détente, due to events that were a much longer story. Suffice it to say, I eventually quit by storming out in the middle of lunch rush and vowing to never set foot inside the building again. Over dramatic? Yes. Very much so. But it felt really good at the time. And the really sad part is that she's hardly the only manager I've seen to commit themselves so deeply to these petty power games. And she had more motivation than most. Some don't even have money on the line. I don't know why they bother even offering availability sheets. I have never known an employer to stuck to them. When I ran restaurants, I did month-long schedules. Most staff had a predictable schedule year-round. Made hiring easy too. Why management chooses to focus on the most mundane aspect of the job boggles my mind.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.